Thank you all so much for being here. It is great to see you bright and early. I made the mistake yesterday of saying yes to a Hannity appearance late last night. So I got home at about midnight and then bright and early this morning. I'm so glad to see everybody here. Morton, thank you. Thank you for everything. I've known Morton since, he would say, before I was born, probably. He and my father were allies in the realignment of Virginia, turning Virginia from a Democrat stronghold into a Republican one, and now we need to relearn some of those lessons that we did back in the 70s and early 80s as we transitioned. We need to go back, don't we? And look clearly at what happened, what in the world we've done wrong. I served with Morton on the Republican National Committee when I was chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia, and he was a stalwart. He was willing to buck the trends and stand up for conservatism when everyone else was going towards the establishment. So we are blessed to have Morton still on the Republican National Committee. And thank you for all that you do through the Leadership Institute, focusing on young people. I want to talk about that today. But I was trained early on by the Leadership Institute. I hope you all don't still have we fill out a questionnaire on what we believe on the different issues, and I do not think I scored 100. I think I would now. But back when I was being indoctrinated at the university, no, oh no, I should never have mentioned it, but I was being indoctrinated, Morton. But no, I was fighting on the college campuses like all of you. Some of you are there right now, but you remember what it was like. It is so much worse right now. And it is so important that we have the Leadership Institute, ISI, Young America's Foundation, these wonderful groups that are trying to make a difference on the campuses, and we are so outnumbered. And by the way, I'm not at Young America's Foundation anymore. I've retired so that I can raise those babies all day long. Actually, I'm writing, promoting my book, and writing a lot of articles and speaking on the college campuses. Now look, there are not a lot of conservatives who are willing to go to the college campuses, and there never have been. It was the greats, Russell Kirk, Bill Buckley, Bob Novak, Phyllis Schlafly, of course, Jeane Kirkpatrick. These are the ones who are willing to take a bold, courageous conservative message to the campuses. Now we have this new generation of young conservatives, Ann Coulter, Michelle Malkin, that are willing to go out there and have pies thrown in their face, to be assaulted, to go in with security so that they can actually make it out unscathed. They don't always. But we have got to focus on young people. That is what Lauren read, the part in the book about which I'm most passionate, in the way he has ripped apart the American dream. Obama has ripped apart the American dream for young people. Now, I wrote this book, The Divider in Chief, not just to put another book out on Obama on the bookshelves, because there are a lot of them. But I am gravely concerned, not just about Obama's socialist views. I'm extremely concerned about that. And about the direction in which he's taking our country. I'm concerned about the devastating impact that this divide and conquer philosophy is having on our nation. The permanent, possibly permanent impact that it's having on the very notion of a democracy. And now let's look at why Obama was elected in the first place. Way back in 2008, he had no experience, no great skills, no diplomatic skills, nothing. One thing, he was a great community organizer. And now I'm not just saying that to disparage him, although it's absurd that we elected a community organizer to be president, but he was good at what he did. He was called the master of agitation when he was in Chicago among his fellow community organizers, because what he would do was masterful. He would go into a community and he would take whatever the issue was, he would turn the members of the community against someone or something. He would stir the pot and stir up this hatred and antagonism and bitterness and jealousy with such skill that it was mind-boggling. And then it didn't matter what he was trying to ram through. People would just say, do whatever you have to do as long as it gets these people back, gets this corporation back, whatever it was. They didn't care. He didn't have to defend his ideas because he did the Saul Alinsky tactic of stirring people up filling them with bitterness and angst. He has done that exact same thing at the national level. And you know, he stirs us up. Of course, the class warfare, you see that now. Success is vilified. Anybody who is successful, we're all rich people, by the way. It just blows my mind. We're all wealthy. We're actually millionaires and billionaires. Nobody even says rich people anymore. They just call anybody making over a certain amount. Really, if you make $100,000 or more, you are a millionaire and a billionaire. That's how they just lump us all together. They've pitted people against success, blacks against whites, women against men, women against women, secular against religious. It is stunning how systematically and effectively he's done that. Young people, he's pitted young people against the rest of America, but certainly against the notion of success, certainly against businesses and corporations, but he has gone through each demographic group and systematically torn them apart. Now, what really concerns me, of course, all of that concerns me, but anybody who disagrees with Barack Obama, who wants to maybe argue the philosophical point or has different ideas, he vilifies them. He puts them in this group to be opposed to have hostility towards. If you dare to suggest that tax cuts are a good thing, and perhaps tax cuts for our job creators, that's a good thing. Barack Obama does not argue the merits of that argument. He says you hate poor people, that you despise those who are struggling. You want to rip away entitlement programs from them. No basis, in fact. Don't even bother with the facts. Now he has convinced America quite successfully that Republicans and conservatives hate women. No idea, well, I do know exactly how that happened. The whole, he's been saying it since day one, that Republicans want to drag women back to the 1950s, kicking and screaming. They actually use that language, that Republicans want to drag women back to the 1950s. And of course, the flap over trying to force religious organizations to provide birth control, coverage for birth control to their employees in violation of their First Amendment rights. You never heard Barack Obama actually discuss the merits of that. You heard Obama and his surrogates immediately say, see, I told you, they hate women, they want to take away women's birth control. Bizarre, nobody ever talked about taking away women's birth control. And of course, Mitt Romney suddenly wanted to take away all women's birth control, wanted to end abortion even in cases of rape, incest, and threat to the life of the mother. That's what Debbie Wasserman Schultz repeated ad nauseum, even though that's not Mitt Romney's position. But people believed it. The last mailing I received from the DNC before the election was on women. It said, Romney and Ryan, shocking and dangerous was in red on women's health issues. They had laid the groundwork. They had laid the foundation that somehow we, Helen, you and me, and Ann Coulter, Michelle Mack, we hate women. We truly hate women. Actually, it was, who's that? Sheila Jackson Lee. Who's that? Sheila Jackson Lee, my favorite. But they were, a lot of the women surrogates and some of the men were saying this. She said that what Republicans want to do, and she said this literally, drag women out of abortion clinics onto the streets and stand there screaming over their bodies. This is what we want to do. That kind of language was in Democrat National Committee mailings. You heard Obama saying it. Issue after issue after issue. It was make stuff up, convince people that Republicans are villains. It's not that they have different philosophical ideas. It's that they are morally flawed in some way. And so whenever Republicans offer an alternative in terms of policy or philosophy, Obama doesn't bother with arguing that policy or philosophy. He doesn't need to. He just says, I told you, they hate women, they hate poor people, they hate black people, they hate immigrants. Case closed. Nobody even listens to the argument because Americans, we want to believe and honor people. And we want to believe that they are coming from a place of goodness. But the Alinsky philosophy is if you just hammer away again and again and again at someone's integrity, at their character, you're not going to have to defend yourself. And listen, Barack Obama does not even try because he can't. if he were going to talk about what his philosophy is, what his ideas are, he would be talking about redistribution. We know that. That is his philosophy. He wants to fundamentally transform the United States of America by bringing down those who are successful to the level of the rest of America. I truly believe in Dinesh D'Souza's philosophy that he is an anti-colonialist, sees America as a colonialist power, and thinks that we have no right to be any better than any other nation. You remember what he said when he was asked, do you believe in American exceptionalism? He said, sure, I believe in American exceptionalism, just like the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism and the Brits believe in British exceptionalism. Fascinating that he brought up the Greeks, but he did. But I believe truly that he has a goal in mind of bringing America down. And now that plays into what's happening now. Look, we have to realize there is no noble motivation coming from the Democrats right now. There is not this desire, no desire to compromise, by the way. Anyone who thinks right now that Obama has turned a leaf and that for the sake of his legacy, he's going to work with Republicans, you really need to read my book. There is no chance that Obama will be compromising. You've already seen it. It was 1 week after the election, after, we're going to compromise, 3 days after the first election, after the first inauguration. Remember when he said to Eric Cantor, this was after that beautiful inaugural speech about how we're all going to come together. I want to listen to you Republicans, especially when we disagree. So the Republicans trotted into the White House. They had one of 2 meetings. They were going to be every week. They had 2 meetings for 4 years. So they brought the Republicans in, and Eric Cantor stated very concisely the Republican position on keeping taxes low. And by golly, Barack Obama looked at Eric Cantor and said, you know what? I won, you lost. I trump you on that. That was the end of, I want to listen to you, especially when we disagree. So this go-round, 1 week after his lovely acceptance speech, Jay Carney said, yet again, something they've been saying all along, on the fiscal cliff negotiations, we're going to look out for those hardworking Americans while Republicans want to go after parents with children with disabilities. Children with autism and Down syndrome was the steady refrain that we heard throughout the election. That is a stunning thing to say, I'm not going to talk about why it's a smart thing to raise taxes on the upper income earners. You never hear why that will help our economy. They do not defend that concept. They say it's a matter of fairness, and we have to basically take it to them. It has nothing to do about the economy. But you never hear anything about that. You just hear them slam Republicans as attacking children with autism and Down syndrome. That has been since the election. You're hearing the same steady refrain on issues like immigration, on abortion. We're going to hear them all steadily throughout the next 4 years. Obama's legacy, what he wants it to be, is not a thriving, booming GDP. He doesn't care about that. He cares about fundamental transformation. He wants to create a system based on redistribution, taking from one group of Americans and giving to another. There's no other excuse for somehow pigeonholing Americans. I've never, ever seen this before, pigeonholing us into certain economic groups, defining us based on our economic status. This class, this notion that we are middle class, that he wants to help Americans get to the middle class and stay there. That's a quote that you hear again and again and again. Who is Barack Obama? Who are the liberal elites to tell us, to tell Americans, to what level of income they should aspire? In America, we believe this is the land of opportunity, and we can achieve whatever level of prosperity we want. And it's a fluid society. That's why so many Americans came here, to achieve whatever level of prosperity they want. Not everybody wants to be wealthy. Some people are happy with a middle income, but we don't classify people based on income. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we just open it up for discussion is what he's done with young people. because that's what the Leadership Institute focuses on. That's a passion of mine, reaching out to college kids particularly, because they are literally under assault there. If you all, those of you who have children and grandchildren, if you ever assume that they are going to be conservative just because you are, please think again. You are up against great odds, and you have to be intentional about passing on your conservative values. You all probably already do this because you're here. But send those children and grandchildren to conferences, to Leadership Institute training seminars. Otherwise, they will be corrupted on campuses. They are just, every one of their professors virtually will be liberal, and those who are conservative will never tell them about it. They are in hiding. And so we have to give them the tools and the resources and the support that they need, because they need courage more than any other characteristic. They need courage. And it's about time we have some elected leaders who have a good dose of courage to act as examples for our young people in standing up for conservative values. I'm extremely worried about that. But young people, Obama was on college campuses from the day he was inaugurated until Election Day, once every 11 days. He took his message to college campuses once every 11 days. That's stunning. That's never happened before. He understands what the left gets far better than we do. I mean, we get it, but most of the conservative movement does not get it, how important young people are to passing on conservative values. If he wins young people, he's won the future of the country. And this number should send a chill down your spine. Equal numbers of young people, 30%, prefer socialism to capitalism. They are winning. Exit polls this go around showed a vast majority of young people believe that government should be doing more, should be interceding more. Abortion, we are way behind when it comes to young people. I thought the pendulum was swinging back. Oh my gosh, the pendulum is not swinging back in our direction when it comes to young people. And gay marriage, I mean, you might as well throw in the towel, not really. But the numbers are overwhelming among young people because we have given up on the social issues. Largely, we have given up. And you hear, who's advising us, by the way, to abandon our positions on social issues? It is, well, fine, but yeah, good point. But majorly, you're hearing the mainstream media, Democrats, and moderates telling us to abandon our position on the social issues, and they're particularly loud coming from the media. It's amazing to me that we would ever take advice from those who are fundamentally opposed to our success. But somehow we seem to be thinking, oh yeah, well the media, they'll love us if we say that we're pro-choice. I'm sure of it. Give me a break. I mean, the problem, in my opinion, with running away from the social issues, which we did quite effectively, we ran as fast as we could in this election cycle. When you create a vacuum, somebody's going to fill it. And the Democrats were very happy to define us on issues of life, on any issues related to the social issues. They came in and filled that vacuum. And we sounded like a bunch of Neanderthals. Whereas being pro-life is a profoundly compassionate and just position. But nobody was out there articulating some very big, I'm not saying we should have talked about it the entire time and that should have been our #1 focus, but if you're going to be silent, prepare for somebody else to define you, and I think that that is completely disastrous. So I hope that right now, as we're looking at fiscal cliff, we're doing this great soul searching of what conservatism needs to be focused on, what the Republican Party needs to do. I hope, for one thing, that we will realize that we are not dealing with intellectual adversaries. They are not going to engage in this debate on any philosophical level that has any sort of integrity. They are going to continue to attack and villainize all of us. They are going to try to avoid any discussion of fact or reality, and they are going to distort and destroy. That's what they do. On our side, a lot of people say, okay, well, we need to get better at doing that too. No, we don't need to do that. Our ideas, when they are put forward in a compelling and courageous manner, always win. Every single time, because they work. Our ideas have been proven throughout time. But we don't do that well enough. In fact, even in this discussion about the fiscal cliff and the discussion during the campaign about raising taxes, we pivoted to defense. We didn't explain why it's a good idea to lower taxes on the highest income earners. I never heard anybody say, look at what Reagan did. He brought the income tax on the highest income tax earners down from 70 to 28%, with a Democrat Congress, by the way. And when he did that, revenue for that income tax bracket by the end of his administration doubled. To me, that's case in point, done. You've made your point. History proves it. It's profoundly compassionate because you're creating jobs for the so-called middle class. You're creating jobs for everyone. You're bringing everybody up. Every single income group benefited under the Reagan administration. Every single income group now is suffering. Every single one of them. But we didn't do that. In fact, the one time Mitt Romney caught fire and really people started getting excited was, of course, that first debate. And thinking, yes, okay, maybe this guy, maybe he can do this. It was about 4 days later, I heard him saying, no, I promise you, we are not going to cut taxes on the highest income earners. He actually said, we're not going to cut taxes on the rich, I promise. Well, first of all, why are we using their lingo? But second of all, why are you ceding the argument? Why aren't you out there boldly proclaiming and championing free market prosperity principles? But we didn't do that. We have got to offer the solution. I'm not even going to say the alternative because they haven't really offered a philosophical different opinion from ours. We have to be the ones that are offering philosophy. Honestly, people are hungry for it. That's why Romney did well after that debate, because he was talking about the founding principles. Remember when he turned around and he saw the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and he referred to it? He was brilliant on that point. I was amazed, but people responded to that. And he talked about a prosperous society. That is what we have got to get out there and talk about. Stop being defensive about our philosophy. We can win. Stop listening to the left. When Ronald Reagan ran for president in 1980, he was attacked by everyone. He was attacked by Republicans. He was attacked, of course, by the mainstream media. He was considered a complete nutcase, or they were trying to convey that that's what he was. But he continued at it. He talked to the American people. He talked in a very bold and courageous way, a compelling way, and they listened. Young people responded to Ronald Reagan almost as enthusiastically as they respond to Barack Obama. It has nothing to do with the fact that Barack Obama is so totally young and hip. He's actually talking to young people. We actually need to go talk to young people. We need to talk to women. We need to talk to African Americans. We need to talk to Hispanics. We don't need to change our position on these issues. We need to actually communicate our position and why the conservative movement is the freedom movement. Everybody does long for freedom and hope, and Americans are innately optimistic, and they think well of people. We have to respond to those instincts and offer a compelling vision for the future of America. The worst possible thing we could do is to fall back into the similar divide and conquer tactics or pivot to defense and abandon our principles. And I think with groups like the Leadership Institute out there championing our principles, and I hope reaching more and more and more young people, we have a chance to take back our country. Thank you all so much. God bless you.
Okay, well, there are lots of questions, I am sure. Why don't we start with this lady?
Oh, Lisa, what is going to be your zinger for me?
I know. I'm sorry. Get ready.
No, it's okay. I know. You asked me something on Facebook.
Yeah, actually, a couple of legislative items that I'd like to suggest for the state of Virginia, but another time.
Okay.
What I found particularly weak of the GOP is that they never actually address the half-truth that is, Obama's argument. And a good example would be these Social Security negotiations. They say they hate poor people. Well, actually, Social Security steals from the poor and gives to the middle class and the rich. So even this 47%, this illusory figure of people who are dependent upon government, if you do the net math, everybody's getting ripped off. But it's particularly egregious for the poor, because if you make $26,000 inflation-adjusted income throughout your lifetime, you have $600,000, if you will, banked with the government, and you lose it if you die before retirement age. So I think the problem here is the GOP is not living their principles, and hence they have weak, superficial arguments that that just actually enforce the divisions, the divisive arguments, as opposed to
Right.
address them, because conservative limited government is for everyone, and we have to actually translate into applied conservative principles. Thank you.
Right, Lisa, remember the Paul Ryan when he proffered his original budget, and Republicans actually got excited and they were defending him. The minute that ad was aired about Granny being pushed off the cliff, Republicans ran for the hills. They gave up without a fight. They didn't defend, they didn't talk ideas, they didn't explain how exactly opposite these programs truly are impacting lower income Americans and our future, how they're completely, and when they say, oh, we need to protect these entitlement programs as they are, well, in 10 years, they're going to be non-existent, and we didn't talk about that. I think one of the solutions is, of course, in determining who our candidates are, we need movement conservatives. I truly think individuals who have been brought up in the movement, and I mean their intellect, they cut their intellectual teeth in the conservative movement. That is so important. That knee-jerk conservative response that is based on philosophy, that is based on the great conservative thinkers of our time, not these newbies who really have no idea what they're talking about. They're just playing to the polls, and then the minute the polls start swinging, they swing as well. We need some real movement conservatives who understand what they stand for. I think Paul Ryan is a great example of somebody who does. I know nobody's perfect, okay? But he's an example of somebody who's better than some of the others. Marco Rubio could be great. We have a great deep bench. Let's start looking critically and finding those who are truly going to be the champions of freedom.
Thank you. Howie?
Hi, Howie. It was great sitting next to you at the UVA Tech game.
That's right. Thanks.
Terrible outcome, by the way.
That was a great outcome. Anyway, thanks, Kate, for being here this morning, and great to see you again. Back to the college campus issue, with 4 daughters graduating already through the Virginia schools, you're 100% right. We're way outgunned on this. Question is, structurally, though, can we, as conservatives, pressure Republican governors across the country to appoint more conservative faculty, i.e. presidents and other leaders of the universities? I mean, or other
Love that
ideas.
question.
Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely. I'm so excited that you asked that question, because a lot of times our conservative governors will appoint some real great, strong renegades in the beginning. I'm looking at one right now. Will appoint some really great conservatives, and then they start rewarding all of their big donors. I understand the political realities of campaign donations and the need to pat people on the back and say thank you. But the campuses, we have got to start putting true conservatives on these boards of visitors, and they have to start taking their responsibilities seriously. When you get put on a college board, I hope the world sees this. When you get put on a college board, immediately the college presidents try to start corrupting you. They try to buy you with these beautiful dinners and great football tickets, and it gets mighty comfy and cozy on those boards. And you just sort of sit back, and they try to just bury you with facts and information, and you can't even see straight. But we need courageous conservatives. On all of the boards in Virginia that I know of, there are a couple incredibly courageous conservatives who are fighting an uphill battle. I think Bob McDonnell has probably done a pretty good job with his appointees, but we need to do a better job of training these boards of visitors members so that they will look critically at the absurd academic offering. I don't even call them academic. They call them academic. They're not. At these absurd offerings that the universities are pouring hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of dollars into, with maybe 1 or 2 graduates who I promise you will never get a job in their field because they don't exist. But we need to start looking critically, and tuition increases. George Allen, back in 1994, froze tuition. How about some more of that? This government takeover of our student loan industry has basically allowed universities just to raise tuition with abandon. They're having a great time. There's no restraint, and so college tuition is going through the roof. Our boards need to be keeping that from happening. And a lot of times, they hear the governor's edicts, and they just sort of, whatever. They don't fight for it. But there are a couple of them who really are fighting hard. And I think Ken Cuccinelli will a masterful job of appointing solid conservatives to these college boards. I think that we will see a real shift. But I will tell you, they've got to have guts. I keep saying courageous. They have to have a steel of spine to be able to serve on these college boards, because the other members, the majority, will try to suck the soul right out of you, as well as the administration, and it's tough to stand up. Even these incredibly successful businessmen have a hard time standing up to some of these college presidents and the pressure that they put on them. So, I mean, you saw what happened at the University of Virginia. But that's a great, great point, Howie. It's an incredibly important one as well. Yes? Oh, sorry, Morton. You.
Okay, you mentioned something about Ken Cuccinelli and that he'll appoint good people, but first he has to get elected.
Oh, that.
So maybe you can talk about the upcoming Virginia elections and how does Ken Cuccinelli succeed in becoming elected governor? Is that even a realistic possibility?
A realistic possibility. You bet it is. Absolutely. Ken Cuccinelli has done extremely well in Northern Virginia as a rock-solid conservative. So absolutely. He is a masterful campaigner because he says what he believes. He doesn't mince words. You should just see the Republican Party establishment when Ken Cuccinelli does some of the stuff he does, challenging the state climatologists on global warming, or, I mean, they just shudder and shake their heads, and people love it. People love him because he just does what he believes. He's not calculating. There is nothing calculating about Ken Cuccinelli, sometimes to the dismay of a lot of political operatives. Look, I think Ken wins by continuing to be solidly conservative, articulating what he believes in a wise way, reaching out to these demographic groups that we ignored this go-around, being smart about grassroots politics again. I don't know how Morton feels about this, but I think that the Republican National Committee and a lot of the campaigns have taken their eye, not Morton, but have taken their eye off the ball when it comes to data collection and that really nitty-gritty stuff that we mastered back in 2004. When George Bush won the second go-around, remember, he hardly won in 2000. Then in 2004, it was masterful. We had this incredible list. Go read what Eric Erickson says about that list that we had in 2004, because unfortunately, it was bought or sold to consultants. They then sold it to different campaigns, and nobody kept up the lists. And so what we've done is let the Democrats get so far ahead of us on technology, and it's very boring to talk about it, but it is so important because we are fighting over minuscule numbers when it comes to winning elections. About 3% of the population, that's what we're fighting for. If we don't know who they are, those 3%, we need to know exactly who they are, what motivates them, we're going to lose. The Democrats know their names, they know the magazines they get, they know the cars they drive, they know where they send their kids to school, they know what motivates them. We used to. We need to get back to that, and frankly, we need to get consultants out of the way. I mean, it was appalling. Oh, I'm so glad. I really was nervous about saying that. They scare me, I tell you. When I became chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia, one of the things I ran on was I am going to send our contracts out for bid. Absolutely, duh. When I became chairman, I said, I'm going to put these contracts out for bid. And I was told, Kate, don't you dare. They will come after you. The people who have the contracts and have had them every cycle, they will destroy you. They will come after you, and they will destroy you. Well, I was this little girl. I was a little nervous about that. But I said, well, oh, well, I guess they're going to have to come after me. I put them out for bid. We got the better deal, and they came after me. That's what they do. And so a lot of times, candidates, I'm just being really frank here, they will kind of pay off some of the consultants. They won't even use them, but they'll give them a lot of money so they won't come after them. They won't attack them internally. It's ridiculous. And a lot of these used to be principled conservatives who then go out there and become a little bit corrupted. Look, our candidates know how to run and win elections. They need to cut out the consultants because unfortunately it's become very much of a money game, and the consultants, it seems to me, universally encourage our candidates to abandon their positions. They encourage them to become nothing, to run campaigns not to lose, and not to stand up for anything. We saw some in the last election cycle that broke my heart, with truly good, principled conservatives who went through the entire cycle without saying anything, without championing and pushing forward the vision that you and I have been fighting and sweating and crying over for years and years and years. We just missed a tremendous opportunity to move our philosophy forward, and I truly do place a lot of the blame for that on the candidates who hired them, but on the consultants who have truly sold out their principles, in my opinion.
Given that Obama's stimulus enriched GE, his national health care bill enriched pharma and the health insurance industry, his bailouts have enriched the auto industry and Wall Street, wouldn't it be more accurate to say that he is not as, at least as he's governed, not a socialist, but a corporatist or a fascist? I know that's a strong word, but look up the dictionary definition of fascism and you'll see that I'm accurate. And also, what do you think of the strategy proposed by Washington Examiner columnist Tim Carney, who's done yeoman's work in exposing Obama's corporatist agenda and how he's enabling big business to feed at the trough at the expense of the true free market and true entrepreneurs and taxpayers, that Republicans embrace free market populism and run as the anti-big government and anti-alliance of big government and big business, and show the American people that the welfare state is...
I didn't cut you off. I agree with you 100%. It's also the supposed green industry benefited ridiculously, and they were all on Obama's steering committee, and they gave him lots of money, and so they received lots of money back and forth, back and forth. I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. Yes, we absolutely need to expose more effectively than we did last go around the corporate cronyism, really, that was going on between Obama. I mean, he said lobbyists won't have access to the White House anymore. Oh my gosh. Practically every Obama appointee was a lobbyist. And did we point that out? I don't recall it ever being pointed out. And the first point you made about what he is, Marxist, fascist, crony capitalist. I was speaking one time, and I'm not criticizing you for this. I was speaking one time at a Tea Party group. I love Tea Party groups. It's my favorite place to talk other than Leadership Institute and the college campuses. But I was talking, and this man shouted out, we were all together. He said, shouted out, because I said, Obama's a socialist or something. And he said, Obama's a communist. I thought, oh, okay, well, okay, let's get to that later. I'm talking. Again, Obama's a communist. He had this mean look on his face. He was just frothing at the mouth. 2 more times. And finally I said, okay, let's talk afterwards about Obama being a communist. He wanted me to say it. Say he's a communist. And so he came up to me afterwards. Big smile, nicest man in the world. Oh, I loved your speech. I loved Sarah Palin, blah, 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 blah. And I said, listen, buddy, we need to talk. You and we need to have a talk, because let me tell you, you're not winning anybody to our cause by the way you just behaved during this little meeting. In fact, a lot of people who are here just to get some new ideas, they are running for the hills because you sound like a crazy man, because he was just frothing. I think we need to talk ideas. We need to champion our ideas. You betcha we attack their ideas, because their ideas will destroy our country. But we need to offer the alternative. And that's what truly our focus needs to be. The alternative is always compared, but we need to be champions of free market prosperity. And we need to talk about why our free market principles benefit African Americans, students, women, Hispanics, new immigrants to this country. We need to be the freedom party that we are, the party of liberty. That's what we need to be talking about.
I think our time is up.
Okay, thank you all so much.